In the next 60 minutes here on Newsnight, Cabinet approves revocation of sold state lands done without due process.
Those that didn't finish the process are automatically cancelled. And so we are going on to make sure that we implement to the letter the Cabinet recommendation to give confidence to the people of Ghana that we are going to protect public lands.
We will tell you which state lands sold under the previous administration will be affected. Stay with us. Also tonight,
NPP's Flagbearer race is down to two front-runners, Dr. Bawumia and Kennedy Agyapong, but nearly 17,000 undecided delegates could still swing the pendulum in Saturday's crucial elections.
Opportunity, chance.
God is going to give me a big win next weekend.
January 31st, yeah, party dachinti kai Dr. Yang Osei Educhum.
The real poll will be on the 31st of January.
JoyNews Research team has crunched the numbers from 8 polls and has details of the verdict on Newsnight. Also tonight, nominations close for NDC Ayawaso East by-election as wife of late MP Abdul Nasir Mahama calls for unity and peace ahead of the party's internal contest as she files to contest as the party's candidate for the March 3 election.
Whatever they are saying, they should be very careful because after these primaries, we have NDC to support. We are one family under one umbrella.
Details as the party wants constituency executives to stay neutral and refrain from involvement in the campaign ahead of the internal contest.
In business, an AG expert Kwame Jantua pushes for government intervention over implementation of industry benchmark pricing.
in sports,
defending champions Kotoko draw Diana Stars in the MTN FA Cup round of 16.
And in today's episode of Climate Evidence, we will take you to Techiman, where the once revered Tano River is being strangled by mud and waste.
We as selfless volunteers have taken upon ourselves that we will restore this Tano River to bring it back to life, to its normal shape, to its normal purpose.
And I'm looking forward to hearing from you. 055-1111-997 is the WhatsApp line. My name is Evans Mensah.
Mine is Gemma up here.
Details up to this. And you are still live here on News 90s on Joy 99.7 FM. And if you were sold state lands under the previous administration, you may be affected by the following. Because we're learning tonight the Cabinet has approved a recommendation to revoke all state lands that failed value for money and process audits during a review conducted by a committee set up by the Mahama-led administration to ensure value for money in the sale of state lands. Now, speaking during a visit by the Vice President, Professor Nana Jono-Pokwa-Agyemang, the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, the Sector Minister, Emmanuel Amakofibwa, warned that the ministry will strictly implement Cabinet's directive. He says once the process is complete, public officials will no longer attempt to unlawfully acquire state lands.
I gave the story that my own house that I lived in for 6 years, I didn't have title. The day it was announced that I was nominated as lands minister, I got a message that my documents, they are working on it fast for me. And it's true story. It's true story. Frankly, it is clear that the systems, land administration, providing basic services for the people of Ghana must change. And so we began that journey first to look at what is really the problem at the Lands Commission. What has been the challenge at the Lands Commission? And these are the challenges that were described. And the process of reviewing. One of the things we all heard about was that public lands that government had taken for specific purposes that now belong to government. Some of them for agricultural purposes, some of them for different purposes were not used. Now becomes government property. And somehow the people who have been given the charge to protect these lands were somehow abusing it. And so His Excellency the President had vowed to make sure that we get it right. And I'm happy to tell you that we constituted a team led by my able deputy, and we got cabinet approval to address that in the long term, that it will, by the time we finish, no government official will even cross their mind to take public land. Because we'll publish your name in every newspaper. By the way, the cabinet has approved our recommendation that all public lands that had been sold are going under review to make sure there's value for money, and process audit was done. Those that didn't finish the process are automatically cancelled. And so we are going on to make sure that we implement to the letter the cabinet recommendation to give confidence to the people of Ghana that we are going to protect public lands.
And this was a major part of the NDC's 2024 campaign for elections. It found its way into the Operation Recover All Loot agenda. My colleague Caleb Ziblim with the JoyNews Research desk joins me with a bit more on this, of some of the lands that may be affected by this. It's very clear the audit is underway. Some of the lands will be revoked or taken, reappropriated by government. What are we learning about some of the state lands that may be affected by this?
Yes, Evan. So we know that in the oral report that was submitted to the president and then to the AG, about $702 million worth of state lands were sold, either undervalued to some former government officials, or were given out to them. So the value in the oral report was $702 million, and that was part of the 21.19 billion that the entire oral report covered. And then we've been looking at the details, and then even though the report was not made public, the chair at the time, Okudzeto Ablakwa, spoke on Newsfile on December 21st, 2024. And he said his team was looking at the sale of the Bulgarian embassy at East Cantonment, which was demolished in 2017 and then sold to a private developer. He also said that the land holding a restaurant in Cantonment, known as Insumnam, which is owned by the president of former President Akufo-Addo, was also under their radar. And again, some airport lands that were sold to a private developer was heavily linked to the NPP government at the time. And then portions of land belonging to the parks and gardens in Accra and Wa were also identified. And then finally, some AU village lands and cantonments, which were demarcated and sold to about 15 politically exposed individuals at the time. And the land was sold for as low as 180,000 Ghana cedis per plot. So we have about 5 of these lands: the Bulgarian embassy, a land holding a restaurant belonging to former President Akufo-Addo's daughter, some airport lands, some parks and recreation lands, and then some AU village lands and cantonments.
And these lands we know were published as part of the oral report. It will be interesting to find out if these specific lands may be part of those that are currently subject on audit, that the Minister discloses has now received approval to revoke, indeed, if they don't meet the value for money test. But the value of all that again is
$702 million.
Thank you very much, Caleb. Let me bring in Pakwesi Shandov. He speaks for the Lands and Natural Resources Ministry, for the Lands and Natural Resources Committee spokesperson. Joins us right now. Pakwesi, thanks for your time here on Newsnight. Perchance, do you know if the lands captured in the oral report are all subject to this review?
Indeed, the review report, the review exercise has been concluded. We are hoping that hopefully by next week we would stage a press conference to indicate clearly the lands that have been affected. But I want to believe that the lands that became subject of conversations within the oral era are part of the lands that would be affected in the exercise. Indeed, any land that has had any form of controversy around it, we can say, it's safe to say now that it could be affected. But next week, God willing, would hold a press conference. The Deputy Minister for Lands and Natural Resources is the chairperson of that committee, and he will announce all the lands that have been affected in this particular audit process.
And you talk about revoking the transfer of ownership from the state to these private individuals. This is the ultimate goal.
Absolutely. Because if you take a careful look at the exercise, there are two things that you immediately discover. The first one is that some of the lands were given out at sums that you may want to say were awfully low. Other ones too did not exhaust the appropriate protocols and procedures. So the review was in two ways. First, we were looking out for value for money, and also we were looking at compliance with respect to the appropriate processes and then protocols. So the lands that would be affected would obviously be lands that flouted these two, and then we'll outline them accordingly.
I mean, we know this was a campaign promise. We know at the time, Okudito Ablakwa led this charge, took journalists to visit some of these lands. Isn't this part of what those who bought the land under the NPP, some politically exposed individuals, will describe as a witch hunt, and this has been done deliberately to simply fulfill a campaign promise?
Absolutely not. The intention here is not prejudicial whatsoever. Indeed, it is not the objective of the government and the sector minister to go after anybody unfairly. The truth of the matter is that even when we are done publishing the affected lands, as far as I know and understand as of now, there's going to be a dispensation for hearing where the ministry will still be open for review of its own decisions, because yes, we want to believe that there may be people who would raise concerns, legitimate concerns, or whatever the concerns may be, for there to be a redress. So for the fact that we are even installing that mechanism, that means that we are concerned about fairness. So it's a very objective exercise. There was no parochialism whatsoever. Indeed, it was done with recourse to fairness and due diligence, and we are not hoping to target anybody. However, if anybody is affected and the fellow has concerns, the ministry is ready to listen and take appropriate steps.
And I want to bring in lawyer Kwame Jan. He is a member of this review committee that looked at the lands in question, and I advise the ministry accordingly. Thank you very much, Prof, for your time here on News Night. The subject of the review of these lands, what was the remit of the committee exactly? And we've heard from the minister that the transfer of ownerships may be revoked. Isn't that the preserve of the courts? If indeed the lands have been transferred and were done wrongly in the view of the ministry, it's only a court that can make that pronouncement.
I agree to you well, and your listeners. What you have to appreciate is that this is not the first time allocations of state lands have been reviewed in this country. I have been around the land sector for years, and these kinds of exercises are pretty regular. And I can tell you this process of review has been going on for like more than 6 months. And some of us who were members of the committee to do the review know that this work was done well and thoroughly without any bias or ill will against anybody. No particular person was a target.
What criteria were you using to assess the lands?
So we use a number of criteria. One, the process audit. So the State Lands Regulations of 1962, LI 230, sets out the procedure for applying for and obtaining state land. And the procedure includes a schedule called Form 5. And this Form 5 sets out the steps you should take before you can apply for and obtain state land. So we subjected the thousands of transactions to that procedural test under Form 5 and determined which passed and which did not pass. So that's the process part. And then remember also, some lands had been earmarked for particular purposes, and the uses were changed and allocated for private development without recourse to proper legal procedure. So those lands are also there. And then we also subjected the transaction to value for money audit. And that the value for money audit is still continuing. So the process audit, the land use audit, the value for money audit, all of these are the criteria, and they are still ongoing.
And I know you're very independent-minded when it comes to looking at these issues when it comes to land. I mean, you're the foremost brain on the matter in the legal realm. However, how do you respond to the criticism that this was a campaign promise and your services may have been co-opted just to achieve a political end?
I can tell you, that's why I said from my experience, at every major change of government, these exercises are carried out. Unfortunately, previously when these exercises were carried out, after the results came out, that was the end. But this time around, the processes for applying for government land are being reviewed, and comprehensively. The internal processes within the Lands Commission for processing the applications are also being reviewed comprehensively. So it's not like previously when the exercise was done and the reports are kept on the shelves without any fundamental changes for the way forward. This time around, fundamental changes regarding way forward are coming up, arising from the review exercise. So it's not like anybody's services. It was a committee of persons. Yes, not all of the members were as knowledgeable as you might see it in land, but different people were on the committee bringing different perspectives to bear on the committee's deliberations and the outcomes of the deliberations.
I mean, can the ministry revoke these transfers without recourse to the courts?
Yes, if the ministry, if you were given land and the area happened to have been zoned for a market, but mistakenly or whatever, that area has been given to you for construction of a residential dwelling, that alone makes it impossible for you to put up a residential dwelling in a place that has been zoned for a market or a school.
But that wouldn't have been the fault of the buyer, if you like. The state agency would have gone to the process of making the allocation. It's the state's responsibility to know which demarcation
state agency made the allocation. But the buyer too must beware. In a landed property transaction, there's the principle of caveat emptor, that the buyer must also beware. The buyer must also conduct some due diligence.
But fundamentally to the original question, can the state still go ahead and revoke without recourse to the courts?
Yes, the state can. And the state has done it numerously over in the past. And look at this whole thing about people who were in residence of state lands. So you are a government official. You are given accommodation in Roman Ridge. Then at the time you are leaving office, you buy the property. Yes, there is a Supreme Court judgment which says it is not illegal. But let me give you an example. I lived in the University of Ghana accommodation for several years on the Legon campus. The Legon campus was built somewhere in, they moved into the new site, I think in 1951. I lived previously in number 20 East Legon. You know who else had lived there before I became the tenant, the resident of number 20 East? So if the previous occupants had taken it off for their private, had appropriated for their private use, would I have gone to get that place to occupy? There are certain things that all of us as a country would have to be conscious about those things, that there are things which are not right, and they are not right.
Well, I'm grateful, Prof. That's Professor Kwame Jande, a land lawyer and member of the committee set up by the ministry to review the transfer of state lands to private hands, and his defense there of the work that they've done. The ministry says next week they will hold a news conference and specify which lands will be affected by the revocation. Pakwesi Shandor joined us earlier. He speaks for the Lands and Natural Resources Committee that did this work. Let's do some politics now, Gemma.
Tonight, the race to lead the New Patriotic Party into the 2028 presidential election is tightening, with the context increasingly shaping up as a two-horse race at the top. Results from 8 separate polls tracked by the JoyNews Research team show former Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia and former Asin Central MP Kennedy Agyapong polling ahead, but the race is far from settled. A significant number of delegates, nearly 17,000, remain undecided, keeping the field wide open as the primaries enter their final stretch. There's also what analysts describe as a rising third force within the party, one that could still sway the direction of the race in its final lap. Data and research analyst here at JoyNews, Isaac Kofi J, will join us shortly with the exclusive details. We do know that Global Info Analytics have done the final polls on this, putting Dr. Bawumia in the lead with 57% of the vote, followed by Kennedy Agyapong with 28%. Dr. Brian Achampong is projected to secure 13%, while Dr. Yao Osei Duchum has 2%. The remaining candidate, Kwabena Agyapong, is recorded at 0% in the poll. Evans, it's going to be an interesting day on Saturday when the NPP delegates go to the polls.
Indeed, and we're going to be all over this from 6 a.m. For you. We've been hearing from the Electoral Commission today on the subject of the elections because they will be conducting it and they will be collating it and announcing the results at the EC headquarters. The Deputy Director of Research at the EC, Fred Tete, says ballot papers and other materials will reach all centers by close of day. That's today, assuring there is going to be a smooth process.
In terms of logistics, so far ballot papers that were printed together with the agent of the candidate has been dispatched to the 16 regional capitals, for which they are being distributed by close of day to all the 276 constituencies across the nation. We've also secured the albums, which happen to be the registers for the delegates. Those things are together with the ballot papers, which has been distributed. Other materials also are ready. For personnel, our district officers and their office staff are the personnel to handle the elections on the D-Day. For arrangement, one, what we know per the album that was given to us has close to 212,000 voters, and we've created 333 polling stations or polling centers where these voters will be voting. The election will start at 7, as you know, and will end at 2 p.m. in the afternoon to make room for the counting at the polling station or the polling centers, and then the results will be announced.
Well, we also spoke a bit more with Fred Tete there about what they themselves expect as far as the security of the poll is concerned, and he's asking the candidates and the delegates to ensure a peaceful poll.
Finest as the NPP is, being a major player in our political space, we expect the delegate to go through this process peacefully. It is just an election. It is nothing more than an election. So we appeal to people to comport themselves and to go this process peacefully. So that at the end of the day, they'll have their choice.
Well, now Isaac Kofi J, he is the data and research analyst here at JoyNews, joins us via Zoom with exclusive details on the aggregated polls. Kofi, tell us how this result was aggregated.
Hi, Jamal, if you can hear me. So the JoyNews Research team actually sampled 8 polls, 8 most recent polls, 3 from Global Info Analytics, 3 from Sanity Africa, 1 from Africa Policy Lens, and also 1 from Dr. Evans Dia. So 8 polls together spoke to about 140,000, delegates across the length and breadth of the country. So in fact, that's how we're able to use the aggregated, polling to actually come out with this new results.
And what are the results?
Well, so according to the aggregator, the data we are gathering shows that looking at the average from the 8 polls that we've actually gathered so far, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia is standing around 45.86%, followed by Kennedy Agyapong, 37.9%. Brian Achampong is around 5.6%. Dr. Duchum 2%, Kwabena Agyapong 1%, and you still have a significant number of registered delegates who still remain undecided or undisclosed in their votes, about 8%.
The results point to the emergence of combined third force, which could determine who wins on Saturday. What more do we know about that?
So if you check the results from the aggregator, what you see is that both Dr. Bawumia and Kennedy Agyapong were actually leading, and none of them was able to get 50% plus or minus 1 from the aggregator. And in fact, we should put across that this is not a prediction, but also just giving you an average look into what the polls are telling you. None of them was able to get 50%. So if you look at what we are calling combined third force, that is what Brian Agyapong, Dr. Ayawaso East, and Kwabena Agyapong are able to pull together. Looking at this aggregator, it's around 8%. If you add that to the undisclosed votes, that's about 16% of delegates who still remain, who could actually determine the outcome of this election. And in fact, if you are looking at actual numbers, we're looking at some 16,000 delegates who possibly may vote for either Dr. Brian Agyapong, Educhum, or Kwabena Agyapong. And if you add that of those who are undecided, we are talking about close to about 26,000 delegates who possibly combined could be what we call the combined third force.
Thank you very much. Kofi Ajay is a data and research analyst here at JoyNews.
And Gemma, as you know, all the aspirants are spending the last few days. You say last days are dangerous, as you know. You need to do something in these last few days to win, and a lot will hinge on what you do in the last days. And let's quickly catch up with the various campaigns as they campaign across the country. Dennis Miracle Obaje is the spokesperson for Bawumia, and Kwesi Kwarteng speaks for the Kennedy Agyapong camp. As you've just illustrated, these two appear to be the front runners, and the polls suggest that one of them will emerge victorious by close of day on Saturday. And Dennis, where is Bawumia tonight, and how is he spending the next 3 days before the showdown on Saturday?
Well, thank you very much. Dr. Mahamudu is wrapping up his campaign tonight. We'll be ending at Menchia North constituency. So currently we're in the Ashanti region. And after today, we would have visited all the 276 constituencies. We're heading towards the D-Day. Yeah.
That appears to be very, very significant workload there on his shoulders. And Kwesi, where's Kennedy Agyapong tonight?
I'm currently in Accra. You know, he rounded his campaign up 2 days ago. But our structure has been that we have 3 different campaign teams. One being led by Kent himself, the other by Natosi, and the other by Ken's wife. Now also rounded up her campaign yesterday. And Ken's wife, Madam Christiana Agyapong, as well also rounded up her campaign just yesterday. So we are all in Accra.
And Dennis, you're closing in the Ashanti region. Why the Ashanti region? And we know in politics, where you earn your campaign, where you spend your last few hours, matters greatly. And there must have been a strategic reason why you chose the Ashanti region for this.
Well, I mean, in this elections, every vote counts. And so we won't necessarily see where we started or where we ended is special from the other. But of course, you know, Ashanti is the heartbeat of our dear party. And so we are surely glad that we are rounding up there. But most importantly, every vote, no matter where the vote is ultimately extremely important to us. Yeah.
And Kwesi, for Ken, he's in Accra. This 3-pronged approach that you've adopted, it is his face on the ballot. Isn't it risky going into the final hours of this race before Saturday?
Well, I don't get the impulse of your question. What do you mean by it's risky?
I said it's his face on the ballot. You have other people who, as you said, stalwarts doing the work in other parts for him. There must be a strategic reason for that. But the guys who go to vote on Saturday are looking for his face on that ballot. Isn't that risky then?
I get you now. Yeah, so essentially, it's just about selling his message. You know, he has had the opportunity to visit the constituencies, all the 276 constituencies. But this time around, we felt that it was important to at least be very close to the delegates at every point with his message. So it was a more reason why at every point we have to get different teams just going to give a reminder about his message. I mean, ultimately, it's just about he himself, like you rightly indicated. But most important is that is an appeal for vote, and you still have to appeal with the message. And at every point, delegates will have to be reminded of the message of them. Let me give you an instance in Asante River. You know, as of now, Dr. Bawumia is in Asante River. But we have had a counter strategy that every point, wherever he leaves every constituency, if he does 4 or 5 constituencies in a day, the following day we send teams to also do follow-up and do mop-up. Most importantly is just to get the delegates to buy his message. And we believe that the more we visit them, the more we send the message to them, that is where they will be able to assimilate it. And I think we are achieving the results from the indications that we are getting.
And just to clarify, he himself has been to all the constituencies around the country.
Yes. Ken himself has been to all the 276 constituencies. Even now has been to all the 16 regions. And even Ken's wife has as well done almost the whole country.
Kwesi and Miracle, German here. A poll aggregation that we have done does not give any of your candidates a clear win. What has your own polls been telling you?
Who is that? Myself or Miracles?
Let me start with you, Kwesi.
Well, for me and for our team, we see polls have a prediction that gives a feedback about proposed projection on how we are faring. Of course, we also have our internally sponsored polls that will also guide us to assess how we are faring. But you see, the most important thing is that for us as a team, we are not banking all our hopes on the polls, because at the end of the day, we are getting varied reports from different pollings. So most importantly, we believe that we have to reach out to the delegates, appeal to them, talk to them, sell our message. And I've always maintained that if there is any other greater pool, that will be the pool on the very election day. And for us, from all indications, we are very confident that 31st of January, Ken will be coming out victorious. As for the polls, it's just to guide us to improve what we are doing. I mean, different polls, even different accounts, sometimes conflicting, sometimes with different methodologies. But ultimately, the most important thing is that delegates vote for you. So we are not banking our hopes on polls, even though we believe that at some point we also have to use it as a guide in terms of our work. But as of now, honestly, if you ask me, I'll say that most of the delegates have already decided where they will vote for.
Miracles.
Well, I mean, the last time I checked, we received close to about 19 different surveys from different institutions. Most importantly, we flip quickly from the numbers and go and check the commentaries and understand clearly what the psyche of the voters is and exactly what they are saying. And we try to factor that at every point in time into our strategy going forward. This morning I woke up with 2 new emails from some other surveys that is supposed to be their final survey in a run-up to Saturday. We've filtered it and we've picked some key very issues which we think are extremely important, and we'll be working with it from now till Saturday. I can tell you
that you've rounded up your campaign. How is that helping you? You mentioned that you've rounded up your campaign. You're doing so tonight. How is the poll, the latest polls you're receiving, going to help your campaign if you've rounded up?
I mentioned to you that Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia is rounding up his campaign today from visiting the 276 constituencies. We're on radio, so I'm not here to share all my campaign strategies with you. But that doesn't mean that across the country there's no campaign going on. So I'll just leave it at that. But most importantly, be rest assured that the feedback from these polls and surveys are plugged directly into our campaign at various levels. I will make sure that it shapes what we do going forward. Because we are very strongly of the belief that the voting decision-making can go as close as the moment the person is entering the booth. And so we don't rest until the person has finally dropped the ballot into the box. Then we know we've closed that deal. So we continue to to be dynamic as possible from now to Saturday.
Thank you very much. Miracles Dennis Abuaje is the spokesperson for the Bawumia campaign team, and Kwesi Kwarteng is spokesperson for Kennedy Agyapong.
Let's bring in Musa Danko very quickly, Executive Director of Global Info Analytics. And Musa, I see your polls. He's not predicting an outright win for any of the front runners, and not even the rest of the field. Is it an indication from all that you've picked up that we are likely to see a runoff?
No. Our poll hasn't said runoff. If you look at our predictions, we have predicted one touch for Bawumia. What your team did was take other polls which have approaches, and that doesn't what things.
So, as far as you're concerned, Bawumia wins this one touch, but how close is it going to be between himself and Kennedy?
It won't be close.
It won't be
because Kennedy is being dragged down by price. We don't expect him to do the same performance as last time, and so is Bawumia. Bawumia will underperform last performance, Ken will underperform last performance, and Brian will better than him.
Oh, goodness me. The line isn't great, but I think I got the import of what you've just said there. He's obviously telling us that we can expect an outright victory for Bawumia. By the way, it means we close and go home quickly as journalists. But other than that, you're going to have a run of that drags. And then he says he's not expecting it to be close for various reasons that he's pointed out. But Musa Dankwa is Executive Director of Global Info Analytics, talking to us about the polls that they've done. You should check how many social media platforms for the aggregator results that we've been bringing you all day. So live your news night on Joy 99.7 FM. You're looking forward to the Saturday. I know you are embedded, so you're going to be close to the action.
Yes. Rest assured that you're going to get up to speed information and details of what's going to happen here on Joy 99.7 FM and the Joy News channel.
Exactly, your election headquarters. And George Affe is joining us with the very latest on the world of business. Hello, George. Gold is at 5,000. Goodness.
5,029.56. Yeah, and it was predicted. I mean, most investors now see it as a safe haven in terms of their investment. And look at what has happened in the U.S. The uncertainty is too much. The dollar is having its own problem. And it's not just about the dollar cash, but assets that are also linked to the dollar as well. So it appears that most of these investors are moving into the normal basic demand and supply. If there's more demand and little supply, the price will shoot up. More central banks over the world are also diversifying their reserves into gold as well. And that is good for us. Last year, we made more than $20 billion in terms of the export earnings.
Huge.
And so
just look at the way the city is performing. It's just a direct result of what we see.
And when you go through the IMF staff report, they say that this gold commodity prices have been one of the major drivers of our economic turnaround. So if this is sustained for this year, as long as Trump is there, maybe you could see this direction in terms of gold prices.
What else do you have in the headline, George?
Well, coming up, energy expert Kwame Jantua pushes government's intervention over the implementation of the industry benchmark pricing for petroleum products. And economist Professor Peter Kote wants Bank of Ghana to press ahead with its Forex intervention program to help sustain the city's good run for this year. The business news on Newsnight is brought to you by MTN Business. Welcome to the new world of business. Kingdom Books and Stationery, your number one-stop shop for all your office essentials, Sinter's tanks and Pepsodent, Herbal and Charcoal. Welcome back to Business on Newsnight. Now, energy expert Kwame Jantua is pushing for some government intervention over the implementation of the fuel price for program. It follows some disagreement and concerns by industry players after the oil marketing companies voted to keep the program. So Jantua believes that this could bring some finality on the issue.
That's what we have. That foreigners are not responsible for 70% of our retail market.
If they can't make their minds up, definitely government has to step in. Because look, we are spending millions of dollars to bring refined petroleum products in. those dollars apparently we shouldn't really be spending, because for Miss Capital Flight, especially when we have a refinery here. So if government has to come in, government should come in. I expect government to come in because if for nothing at all, you're talking fuel. Look, the development of a country depends on the type of roads and transportation system you have. And if there's a challenge with any of the components, it creates challenges for government also. So I believe they should quickly come in and see how we sort this thing out once and for all.
Do you think that Star's oil action could create a bad precedent for the industry and the association itself?
They are now number one in the country.
Yeah.
I think.
And they are backing out of an association because of a disagreement on a floor price issue.
I think they are big brother now, and they should be able to find ways of negotiating.
NAG expert Kwame Jantua. Economist Professor Peter Kote wants the Bank of Ghana to press ahead with its forex intermediation program to help sustain the city's good run for this year. It is coming after a new data from the bank showed the dollar demand has picked up strongly, resulting in some marginal depreciation of the cedi against the dollar over the past 3 weeks. But Professor Kote says the Bank of Ghana has what it takes to firmly stabilize the Ghana cedi for this year.
I think the Bank of Ghana going forward should continue to intervene as and when necessary, but this should be structured, this should be well coordinated, and you have to also announce to the public so that that feeds into people's expectations, and then we get to stabilize the currency. I believe the discussion about how they deal with the gold board, the gold purchases, and to avoid subsequent losses is also quite in order. And the need to ensure a stable forex, I believe, is good for the country. However, the stability is key. We also have to be cautious, but too much appreciation also hurts exports, and we need to ascertain that we need to engage businesses, exporters, to see how well this is affecting them, but to what extent this is affecting their businesses. But I believe when it's stable, it works to the advantage of the market. Even exporters can then feed that into their pricing, can feed that into their price build-up and cost build-up, etc. So that is.
And that is economist Professor Peter Kote. Trade, Agribusiness and Industry Minister Elizabeth Ofusojari is insisting that prices of spare parts have dropped. She's therefore rejecting claims by some transport operators that is the main reason why they haven't moved to reduce fares. Meanwhile, the minister is therefore rejecting reports that the retail market has been taken over by foreigners.
That's what we have. That foreigners are not responsible for 70% of our retail market. I don't need rocket science. I just need to go to the market and scan around and see how many retail outlets are manned by foreigners. 70%? I don't know where that statistics is coming from, and I don't think that it is correct. I would not deny the fact that there may be a few people in the retail trade, but this is what happens. Even those people in the retail trade who are foreigners are being fronted by Ghanaians. If you enter the shop right now, you see a Ghanaian sitting manned by a Ghanaian. And if you go to the Registrar General, the name on that registration is a Ghanaian name.
Trade, Agribusiness and Industry Minister Elizabeth Ofusojari. The government of Japan has signaled its commitment to deepening economic and trade ties between a country and Ghana, especially when it comes to the energy sectors. The scheme to lie during the visit by the Bawumia Independent Power Plant side by the Japanese delegation led by its ambassador to Ghana. There is more in this story by Kwame Yanka.
The visit by the Japanese delegation, led by Japan's State Minister for Foreign Affairs, Ayano Kunimitsu, and Japan's ambassador to Ghana, His Excellency Hiroshi Yoshimoto, reaffirmed the growing Ghana-Japan partnership in energy and infrastructure. Welcomed by Senpai's board chair, Samuel Nanabru Butler, the delegation toured the Bawumia Independent Power Plant, which supplies about 10% of Ghana's installed power capacity. Japan's ambassador to Ghana, His Excellency Hiroshi Yoshimoto, says Japan remains committed to supporting energy security, private sector investment, and touches on power purchase agreements.
the president of Sumitomo Company and the President Mahama met and discussed this issue and moving very smoothly on the track. But there's something remained, as you mentioned, to the approval revised PPA.
Japan's State Minister for Foreign Affairs, Ayano Kunimitsu, calls for more collaboration. Meanwhile, Senpa Board Chair Abdul Butler is optimistic about the year ahead, confidence about government efforts to key financial challenges.
Yes, we did have some challenges, but I can say confidently that since the Mahama administration came, they have continued from where we left off. They have picked up, they have restructured the debts that due us, and they've met their obligations. ECG2 is being current with payment, and they are not slipping or defaulting.
The Japanese delegation praised the independent power plant scale, technical excellence, and strategic role, describing it as a model of sustainable investment for national development.
And that is Kwame Yanka with that report. And that's all for Business on News Night.
We can do sports now.
And to some MTN FA Cup, where defending champions Kumasi Asante Kotoko will face the Diana Football Club in the round of 16 of the 2025-26 MTN Cup, following the draw earlier today. My colleague Lawrence Bedu has more.
The two teams will face off in one of the few All-Premier League encounters in the last 16 stage of the Cup competition. The Porcupine Warriors and the Ojalats met earlier this season in the Premier League, playing out a 1-1 draw at the Baba Yara Stadium. In other games, top flight side Dreams FC will face lower tier side Inter Allies. 11 Wonders will take on Atram Divisi, while True Life will also battle with Heart of Lions. Techiman Liberty Youth and Real Tamale United will square off in another exciting fixture, with Brekum Chelsea coming up against Tamale City. GPL leaders Mediama Sporting Club will host FC Samatex, while Nations FC face Swedru All Blacks. Kotoko are the defending champions of the competition. The games will be played between February 6 and February 9.
That's it for the sports segment. Over to you, Vance.
It's a live here on News Night on Joy 99.7 FM. Now, the Tano River, once the sacred and beating heart of Techiman, has been reduced to a desolate scar of cracked mud and waste. The crisis that is flooding homes, spreading disease, and affecting communities. In this episode of Climate Evidence, narrated by Anas Abid, we trace how unchecked urbanization and the brutal whip of climate change has conspired to kill a lifeline, and witness the defiant spark of hope as a band of young volunteers, the City Boys, wage a gritty hands-on war to bring their river back to the brink.
Once this river carved stories into this land, it carried canoes, quenched thirst, and cradled life. Its name was whispered with respect, Tano. Today, it is a whisper of what was, a ghost of itself.
It's sad to see the state of the Tano River now. When we were young, the Tano River was revered. But now, the river is no more there. I think the river is now a gutter.
That transformation from queen to gutter is not a natural disaster. It is a human-made crisis, and its consequences are being felt most by those who depend on the river for their very survival. So what forces have conspired to turn this source of life into a source of poison? Area head of the Environmental Protection Agency, Osman Young, shares some key contributors to the current situation.
This is due to, number one, encroachment from urbanization. So if you just look ahead here, about 30 meters away from where I'm currently standing, there are a lot of houses which have encroached the riparian buffer that protects the Tano River.
But there is a dangerous accomplice in this crime, one that supercharges the damage: climate change.
If we had huge volumes of water in the tunnel, that will contribute to cooling the town in these days of high temperature as a result of climate change.
In the face of this colossal challenge, however, A new generation is refusing to surrender. They are the city boys, and they have declared that the fate of their city is inextricably linked to the fate of this river.
We as selfless volunteers have taken upon ourselves that we will restore this Tano River to bring it back to life, to its normal shape, to its normal purpose.
The story of the Tano River holds up a mirror to all of Ghana. It shows us how quickly neglect can strangle a lifeline. The Tano River gave Techiman its life. Now Techiman must fight for hers. The verdict on whether this river lives or dies forever is now in session. Anna Sabit, JoyNews, Techiman.
This story is brought to you by JoyNews in partnership with CDKN Ghana, University of Ghana Center for Climate Change and Sustainability Studies, with funding from Claire R4I Opportunities Fund.
Now, several buildings within the Chado enclave have been pulled down as part of the ongoing demolition exercise in the Ladadikotopon municipality of the Greater Accra region. Today's exercise follows a similar one carried out along the Teshu Bush Road on Monday, aimed at protecting the Kmeshi Lagoon and reducing the risk of flooding. The Director General of the National Disaster Management Organization, NADMO, Dr. Joseph Binyan Kayo, who is leading the exercise, tells JoyNews the demolition is necessary to protect Ghana's ecosystem.
Yesterday we were at Bush Road, today we are here. As part of the continuing exercise to free our lagoon and its tributaries of encroachment. So yesterday we were able to clear the Bush Road up to the point where we think is enough a buffer for the lagoon. And so today we are here. It's a river that links to the lagoon. And then we realize, you see, even where we are standing and doing the interview, you see that place, the trees. This place was covered by trees, just like that place. But me and you, we've come to cut down the trees and we fill this place for construction work. It's supposed to be a riverbed. It's supposed to be a place for water. The next phase is to clear all debris from the demolition sites. All the rubbles will be cleared, and then we can have a clear view of the land.
The municipal chief executive for the area, Alfredo Sni Anyete, says structures affected by today's demolition exercise were put up without the required permits, and that simply means no compensation for the affected.
It was going to be an eventual thing for the Assembly itself to have done the exercise, but NADMO had to come in because I'm sure they felt maybe our processes were a little slower, and then maybe we are in January now, we are approaching the rainy season, and they do not want us to say, oh, maybe it's too close. So I'm sure that's why they want to take the exercise early enough to prevent flooding when it is not done properly.
What happens to the people who have been affected by this demolition exercise? Do you have any plans to support them, compensate them, relocate them?
From our standpoint, and I believe from the traditional authorities' standpoint, that place is an ecological site.
And that's it for News Night tonight. A few of your messages just before we wrap up. I'm strongly, it says, in favor of the work done by the oral team to deal with the lands that were sold under the previous government. Nana Ekwama says, I have no doubt that my fellow NPP delegates will vote overwhelmingly, he says, for His Excellency, Dr. Bawumia. And that's it for News Night tonight. And Gemma, guess who's coming up next? Geek Squad with Peps. And what are you talking about?
Tomorrow is going to be Data Protection Day, and for us on Geek Squad, we want to talk about the theme for the year, which is your data, your identity, building trust in Ghana's digital future. So we'll have guests and we'll get into more details of that so that at least people can know the things you post online, everything about you, how that is affecting you, and even sometimes the information that you give people, including your phone number and sometimes your Ghana card.
You need to stay for this. Yeah. My name is Evan Spencer.
My name is Gemma Apia.